We don't know why either. Listen, you know, I just love, we've got to think outside of the box. Sometimes as librarians we can be caught in our traditional notion of what school libraries are. And I think the world of our kids, their devices, their absolute attachment to their devices, the notion of a school library in their pockets. Is your school library available to a child on his or her cell phone? Why not? I want you to think outside of the box. When a kid is out somewhere wanting some information about something, does the child reach into his or her pocket, pull out a cell phone and go to your school library because he knows that your school library is going to provide good information? This is a challenge that I give my school librarians in New Jersey. And some of them look at me rather blankly. It's about thinking differently. This is a scholar. When we look at the research on school libraries, here's Professor Mary Gaver. Mary Gaver, you know, could be anybody to you. But Mary Gaver was the very first researcher 50, 60 years ago to do school library research. She also founded the library school at Rutgers University. She looks a little bit fierce there, you know, but apparently they tell me she was a really lovely person. But here's what she said. Look at what she said how many years ago? 55 years ago. Now, she didn't have, you know, libraries in those days in the US were barely more than a cupboard full of books. And yet she did some significant research across the US. And in 1958 she said, with the school library literally the heart of the educational program, the students of the school have their best chance to become capable and enthusiastic readers, informed about the world around them. And look at this last line. Alive to the limitless possibilities of tomorrow. That's your school library mission statement, isn't it? You want your school library to be that space, whether it's a physical space in your school or whether it's a digital space in your school. You want your library to open doors to the world. And I love the work that has been done here in Europe about libraries opening doors. But you don't open the door simply by making this information available. And I want to take you into some of the research that we've been involved in that really highlights the critical dimensions of your work as a school librarian. And I believe when I hear people saying to me, do we really need a school library? We've got all of that technology. We've got access to vast quantities of information on the internet. Look at the cost of employing people to work in these libraries. Kids are not even going to the library, they're going to Google. Do we really need a school library? I believe we do very strongly. Have a look at these pictures. These were of a school in Massachusetts, one of the schools that I have worked with in Massachusetts. And this school library was, for many decades, this dreadful, dingy, dark place. And the school really believed that information was the foundation for students deeply learning. And so the school invested this vast amount of money in refurbishing the school library. It's actually called the Learning Commons. And you can see the pictures of the refurbished school library. Every piece of furniture, the shelves, the beautiful sofas, the chairs, I haven't shown you the technology that's surrounding the beautiful technology laboratories. Everything is on wheels. They can move the space. They can move the furniture to create any kind of learning space. And it's very interesting that the school has actually labelled their school library the Learning Commons. This is a common place in the school where kids learn the critical thinking capabilities of engaging with information, of learning to create ideas and to be producers of knowledge. Now, I know you can't see it very well. You can see some labels. At the back, let me just point it out to you. If you look there, you can see, you probably can't see it, but there is a slogan written on the wall of the library. And it's a quote by John F. Kennedy. And the statement says, "We set sail on this sea because there is knowledge to be gained." And that's why we have school libraries. It's not about the information that you have in your school libraries. It's about the knowledge that kids create because of their participation in school libraries. Now, it's very interesting. In this particular library, there are 3 words everywhere. And you can see one of them right in the top right-hand corner. Can you read that? Ask. All through that library, in great big letters, are 3 words. Ask, think, create. That's everywhere, on the walls, down the poles, in that library. Because when students come into that library, they're confronted by these 3 words. Ask, think, create. This is a place of help for your learning. Ask for help. Here's a place where we're going to teach you to think with information. And we're going to teach you to create your own deep knowledge and your own understanding. You know, things have changed, haven't they? Rodin's famous sculpture. And look at the thinker as we see it in 2012, 2013. Is this what we're on about? You see, here is the reason why school libraries should exist and what your role should be. Look at this picture. It's covered in, I don't know what the Portuguese word, but apps. App. Do you call them apps? Good, you call them apps. Touch an app and presto, information is here. And that's the nature of our information world. And I really believe from a publishing point of view that we're going to see much, much more apps-driven content. Our libraries, our digital libraries will be apps-driven. But is that why we have a school library? What's the most important app that we have to switch on? Isn't it the brain? The mind. That's the app that we have to switch on as school librarians. And I'm going to come back to that in a very significant way when I talk about the results of our New Jersey study. But the reason why we have school libraries is not merely the provision of information. It's about turning on the lights, turning on the mind. How do we get kids to engage their mind in this amazing, unprecedented information environment? You like it? Isn't it sad? Don't you sense in the humour of it, of course I laughed too when I saw it, but when you think about that, this is the information world of these kids. Where do you go for information? They'll say, what? Google, Wikipedia, and whoever the hell invented copy and paste. This is the serious learning problem. Do you realise, at least in the US, at the university level, most disciplinary action involving students, when students are in trouble at the university, the most common and most significant reason why students are in trouble and get involved in some kind of disciplinary action, what's the main problem? It's about unethical use of information. It is, in fact, copy and paste, the plagiarism problem. That is the most serious issue facing American universities today. And sadly, we experience it even in our own university. You see, when we look at the body of research, and indeed the research that I've been doing over many years, as we've tracked students engaging with information, what do we see? We see what researchers call horizontal information seeking. In other words, they go to this website, they look at it very quickly, they bounce to another website, they bounce to another website. They're skimming a great deal of information on the surface. This, rather than digging deep and thinking critically, we see this pattern of surface information gatherers and seekers. The research tells us that students use very simple search strategies. They make very limited information assessment. They don't engage in assessing the quality of information. One researcher calls it squirreling behaviour. Do you have squirrels over here? We have trillions of them in the US. And you watch the squirrels. They're, you know, in the US and here as the fall approaches. These squirrels are out there, they're just frantic. They're just bizarre, collecting stuff, and they're darting, you know. They're just like crazy little animals. And they're stockpiling nuts for the winter. And you see them, and this is what kids are doing. They're like squirrels. They engage in this frantic information seeking, grabbing this, and I'll download this, and then what happens? The night before their assessment is due, they've got this great pile of downloads. Have you experienced that with your kids? And then you think, what do I do? And what happens is that they're superficially gathering information. In fact, what research tells us, that kids spend more time, can you believe this? They spend more time finding the stuff, which isn't a lot of time, than they do in actually engaging with the stuff to build their own deep knowledge of their topic. And so research tells us that kids are looking for facts. They're not making good judgment about the accuracy of those facts, and they engage in this superficial effort of building deep knowledge. And one of the things that's missing here, and I'm not one for just blaming the kids. And here's where we come to why we need school libraries. Because school libraries, to me, are not merely places to find information. School libraries, in my view, and if we want school libraries to survive, they become places where children learn how to interrogate that information and learn how to build deep knowledge for themselves. In other words, part of our role of school libraries is teaching kids not just to find the stuff, but how to take this stuff and build deep knowledge for myself. And you know, when I look at many of the information literacy initiatives, wonderful as they are, I've been a long champion of information literacy initiatives. But in many respects, we've done a really good job at teaching kids to find stuff. But in this information environment, the critical need is to teach children how to build their own knowledge and understanding. And indeed, how do I engage with multiple perspectives? How do I deal with conflicting information? How do I analyse information to get the really rich points? How do I put all of those ideas together? How do I construct an argument? How do I develop my own position on a topic? How do I develop a conclusion? You see, all of these kinds of capabilities are about engaging with information, analysing information, working out the different perspectives, developing my argument, drawing conclusions, and so on. And I want to say that at the heart of quality school libraries is a focus on that deep learning through information. And it says it makes some interesting points about what our role is. And I believe that the successful school library is not just a place to get quality information. It's a place where students learn the creative processes of engaging with information and putting it together and being able to use the tools of technology to showcase just how much I've learned. So the challenge is that we shift our thinking from libraries as providers of information to libraries as centres for knowledge construction, for the creative production of knowledge. And that says we've got to think differently about the kinds of skills that we teach them. And in some respects, I know this sounds really cheeky. I've got another hour. She's wonderful. The focus has to shift. You know, I actually kind of think, and some of you might disagree with me, I kind of think that we've almost got to stop teaching kids to find stuff. I know that sounds heretical and goes against what we do, but look, kids get the stuff. We've got to put our energy on helping these kids develop the critical competencies to do something with that information. You know, in some of the early research that I did, and we tracked 500 students. They were doing research tasks in 10 different schools. You know, and I came to the conclusion that when we got to the end of tracking these students, this is 500 kids from grade 6 to grade 12. When we got to that looking at their work, I just wondered, did they even learn anything? You know, they were doing these projects, and most of them were like, pick a bird, pick a dinosaur, pick a planet, pick a disease, pick an inventor. And the kids were just stockpiling, putting together lists of facts that they had copied. And in fact, what they were doing was simply transporting a fact from one source to theirs. And you know, at the end of it, you think, well, what did these kids learn? And I have to say, for a lot of these kids, they didn't learn anything. Because they didn't really engage with the information. And many of these kids, we realised, actually hadn't been taught the skills of engaging with information. And that is the key challenge. So my question, first of all, to bring all of this together now, is what is a school library? And here is my working definition. Marie Jose, you wanted me to say, what is a school library? She asked me that at lunchtime. What is a school library? And you'll notice carefully in my definition, the school library is the school's physical. I actually believe we need a physical place in a school. The school library is the school's physical and virtual learning commons, where inquiry, thinking, imagination, discovery, and creativity are central to students' information to knowledge journey and to their personal social and cultural growth. In other words, our school libraries are not just places for information, but they learn the information processes necessary to be creators and producers of knowledge. But it's not just about schoolwork. It's about their personal growth. It's about their social and cultural growth. So I'm just putting that out there for you today as a way of as you work to define what your school library is. In this particular definition, I'm saying that our library is in fact a learning centre. It's a pedagogical centre rather than merely a place for information. Look at the two pictures. Look at the words as these young kids come into the library. Think about the signs in your library. Do they say no food allowed? Silence? No eating? Is that what the kids read when they come into your library? Look at this library on the left. The kids walk into the library and they see this wall and it says, invent, talk, dare, reach. We've got to inspire kids. Look at this library here, and it's a bit hard to see in my picture. But the ceiling of this library is covered in those conversation bubbles, you know? And every conversation bubble has a question. The whole ceiling in this school library is covered in questions. Because this is a place where you question. It's an inquiry. I love it, an inquiring galaxy. I should write that down. Please write it down for me. That's actually really lovely. But it is, can you see, this is a place where you come with questions, hard questions. This is a place where you dare to think and talk. And think about how the physical space of your library creates this. Now, I want to talk to you about the most recent research studies that we've published in Sizzle. This was you can see the two studies here. If you go to our Sizzle website, you can download the studies. Now, if you want some nice light reading tonight, you can go and download Phase 1. It was done in 2 parts. Phase 1 is only about 380 pages, so that's a good read at the end of your 2-day conference. And the second phase, it's about 200 pages. But there are some executive summaries and all of that. But this is the last round of research that we've been involved in. It was completed in 2011. By this time next year, I'll have the next major research project to tell you about, which is really interesting. But I wanted to just talk about these 2 studies because we wanted to gather input from not just the school librarians in New Jersey, but also from principals and classroom teachers and curriculum leaders and technology leaders who work in these schools. And we wanted to get a sense of what do these school libraries actually contribute to the learning agenda of New Jersey schools, and indeed what do principals and classroom teachers think about it all. So I want to spend a little bit of time taking you through these. This is just the sample that we worked with. We gathered in Phase 1, which was designed to construct a picture of what school libraries did in New Jersey. So the first phase was a voluntary online survey. We gathered data from well over 700 school librarians in the state. So it's a pretty large sample. We actually asked 103 questions. Now that can be a bit daunting, can't it? But they're pretty quick and easy to answer. We took a long time at doing this, so as to construct a picture of just how rich the contribution of school libraries are. And you know, all around the state of New Jersey, people were saying, I have no idea what school librarians do or what they contribute. Have you heard that here? But you've got to gather data. You've got to gather data. And this is what we did. You know, in phase 2, which I think was really the most interesting study, we did an in-depth focus, an in-depth analysis of 12 schools, which we had determined were really quality, effective school libraries. And we wrote to the school librarian and the school principal and said, can we come to, we think you've got a really hip-hop, great going, dynamic school library. Can we come into your school and spend some time talking to you, understanding what's going on? We also said we want to talk to the principal, we want to talk to curriculum leaders, we want to talk to teachers. And so we went in, this took a long time to gather this data because we were in these schools for a very long period of time. You know, we were collecting this, let me tell you, in the middle of winter. There was one school where we could only have the meeting with the school principal and the curriculum leader at 6 o'clock in the morning. Can you believe that? And here we are driving for an hour upstate New Jersey. You know, there's 12 inches of snow on the ground. And we rock along to this school at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, you know, and that was when we were thinking, oh, you know. But we persevered and ended up interviewing 97 school leaders, principals, curriculum leaders, teachers. And they gave us the most amazing insights into why they believed their school libraries and their school librarians were so successful. And in fact, we said at the end of our meetings with these school leaders, we said to them, if you had unlimited money, what would you do in relation